All right, you ready?
Are you?
Am I ever?
Good, fair point.
Welcome to the Westminster Effects Doxology podcast. We explore popular practices, songs, and ideas in the modern church world in light of Sola Scriptura and Toto Scriptura. I'm Cody Fields, president of Westminster Effects. You can go to westminstereffects.com and buy stuff for your guitar. You can join the discussion in the Westminster Effects Doxology Podcast Lounge on Facebook. You can support the show at anchor.fm. Even $1 a month helps, and it helps us improve this thing that you're listening to right now. Also, make sure you subscribe, comment, Facebook and Instagram, all that kind of good stuff.
As you do.
So on and so forth. We do not have the Right Reverend Bradley Cox from Resurrection Church in Greer, South Carolina. But as you just heard, we also do have, I don't even know what I'm doing at this intro.
Are you?
Go ahead.
I mean, be honest with me.
I just had a stroke is all. Don't worry about it.
Are you okay?
Yes.
Good.
Blink twice if you're being held hostage.
Well, hey, everybody. John Ross here, Westminster Effects artist.
We are both not
gracious.
Much like the old My Chemical Romance song, I'm not okay.
Right. I'm going to start my part over. Hey, everybody. John Ross here, Westminster Effects artist, Augsburgian Christian, temporary full-time worship leader at Christ Lincoln in Lincoln, Nebraska. From Lincoln, Nebraska, it's me.
So temporary full-time, huh?
Yeah. So, it's, I mean, my role has kind of developed into more of an MD thing recently. I'm taking kind of the more, we'll call it instrumental administration tasks of the band. Anything from, multi-tracks production to arrangement notes, running rehearsals, kind of via talkback mic, calling audibles during the service if necessary, that sort of thing. Whereas Josiah, my partner at the church, has done the primary kind of worship leader gig, the front man slot. Mm-hmm. His wife should be having a baby any day now, and so this week was supposed to be our clean cut for October 3rd. Because we wanted a clean cut and not like, oh, hey, last minute, John, you're up. But that's exactly what happened on Thursday because one of our drummers decided not to show.
Yippee!
Yeah. And not only decided not to show, but decided to cancel after rehearsal had started. And we were waiting for him. So Josiah apparently taught himself, I mean, he's played drums for us before, but taught himself how to play drums using Rock Band, the PlayStation.
Ah, yeah.
And he's actually pretty gosh darn good at it. And so he switched back there, and I kind of spur of the moment took my rhythm guitar parts and brought them up to the front and shoved a mic in front of me, and we made hay. But yeah, no, it was a good set list. Oh shoot, what did we do this past week? We did "Old Praise Him" by Crowder, old one. It was like David Crowder Band era Crowder. We didn't do the La Las though, because I mean it's not Christmas. I mean the Fa La Las are Christmas time. And we did "Every Beat" by North Point. Oh, this was cool. We did a new song. Cody, I told you about this the other day. We did a new song by We Are Messengers called Come What May. Our current sermon series is Psalm 23, walking through the sections of that over a 3-week period. And the bridge of Come What May is really the first two verses of Psalm 23. And Josiah, also being the church's communications coordinator, posted, did one of those Sunday set list posts. He usually does, and he tags the musicians in it. And he apparently tagged We Are Messengers. And lo and behold, we are messengers from the approved account, or the official blue checkmark account replied back to the church post and be like, so glad you're including that song in your worship set. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And yeah, it went well. And then we closed things out with Better Than Life by Phil Wickham. So yeah, it was a good set list. Doing Who You Say I Am next week as I smack my microphone. It is a good one. And then there's also Turn It Up by Planet Shakers. It's fluffy, but it's fun. It is fluffy, but
so speaking of, before we get into our main topic, speaking of Sunday set lists and stuff, we did Echo Holy by Red Rocks Worship.
Oh, okay.
And that was the first time, like, Steven's done it, just him and his wife with acoustic and such before. This is our first time doing it as a full band. So this is the first time that I've had to learn the parts, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you just get things stuck in your head. You play them so much, play it twice at rehearsal. Well, we actually didn't have rehearsal, but, learning it, playing it several times at home, playing it twice before church Sunday, and then playing it twice because we had 2 services. So that's a bunch of playing this song. And it is a catchy song. Mm-hmm. Even, it's not upbeat, but it's catchy. Mm-hmm. And so there's that line of, a million angels fall face down on the floor, forever, echo, holy is the Lord, whatever it is. I keep hearing that line with the wrong lyrics. Instead of a million angels fall face down on the floor, I keep hearing a million angels fall passed out on the floor. and then I have visions of like Gabriel with an empty 12-pack of Bud Light next to him. This song is ruined for me. And it's all my fault.
Like a 40 of Mickey's sort of fella. I don't know. No, I mean, like, it's a cool lyric. Reminds me of the hymn. Let angels prostrate fall, bring forth the royal.
Oh yeah. I already know where you're going with this.
Lord of all. Yeah.
It's the angels prostrate fall. Yeah.
Not angels prostate fall.
No.
I don't believe angels have a prostate. And if they do, I'm sure they're in great shape.
Yes.
Anyway,
that's as far as we're going with that.
That's enough butt stuff for one episode.
Gosh. Oh, this explicit tag brought to you by Sean Ross. Oh my goodness. So main topic. Let's just hard cut that before we.
The great thing is that's going to be underscored by like that fun little catchy acoustic music that I play, during while we train. But of course you don't know because you don't listen to this.
Because I don't listen, of course.
But don't worry, that would be moderately graceful transition.
Right. So, funny story happened this weekend, and I will exclude names of certain individuals because it's just it's a hilarious story, honestly. But I have been through Westminster Effects co-sponsoring some local shows with my friends at Lyman Guitar, and we were scheduled to have one this Saturday. And my band was going to play along with 2 other bands. So 3 total acts. My band had to drop off. Just some unforeseen, uncontrollable nonsense. All right, cool. And I was going to, wing /BS a solo acoustic cover set, do some sing-along type stuff.
Instead of igniting the sky, you were going to, slightly warm up a pocket of air.
Exactly. And open it, so it'd be the acoustic guy, with some sing-along emo stuff from the mid 2000s, and then go into
when I was a young boy. Anyway.
And but then Saturday, another of the bands messaged and was like, we're really sorry. We have to drop off. It's more unforeseen, uncontrollable stuff.
Right.
They had no control over it. So, all right, cool. And then, so I messaged the third band, hey, we got to cancel this. It's basically going to be me with this other band. And again, leaving them nameless. So no feelings get hurt, right? Well, their feelings are already hurt, but we'll get there. And they're not going to listen to this anyway. So whatever. And so I'm texting with a couple of the people from Lyman Guitar, and they are, they're understanding. Yeah, like that's fine, whatever. But they're here already, and this was at 3:30 for a 7:00 show. This third band had gotten there at 1:30 in the afternoon. So,
oh man.
So what are y'all doing? Like, do you not have anything to do? But they were complaining that it was disrespectful to cancel, and it was their first show and has to happen. And they're like, well, it's at our venue and, we have food to sell and such. So if you can get people here and you can fill out the bill, then okay, fine. And okay, so they're kind of being obnoxious and whatever. And I'm getting play-by-play from some of the Lyman Guitar people the whole time. And eventually it comes time to sound check. And it did not go well. The drummer couldn't stay on beat. They were asked, how many vocal mics do you want? And there was only 2 of them, and they didn't know how many vocal mics they wanted. There's only 2 options. It's 1 or 2. So,
except as the story continues, we may find out that the option was actually
could have been 0. And they were going to run backing tracks, which that's not a big deal. Like John, y'all still run Ableton, right? With some tracks.
Absolutely. I mean, highly mixed and produced and automated. I mean, but yes.
Right. So you run some tracks. My band runs some tracks because we don't have a synth guy anymore. We used to have a keys player. And so we run our keys parts and through a track, and it's synced up with a click and all that kind of stuff. But these guys were not going to do that. They were just going to use a phone, which wasn't on airplane mode.
I didn't hear that part.
Yeah. And just play their stuff that was on YouTube, the fully recorded, including vocals and drums stuff from YouTube. And there was only 2 of them on vocals and drums. Everything else was heavy synth based, which that's fine. I don't care what your genre is, but maybe don't include things on your tracks that are going to be handled live. And so eventually, through all of this, to get to the big point, one of the Lyman Guitar owners, who is not, his native language is not English. So he's very blunt. He speaks dictionary English. He does it well. But when English is your second language, or anything is your second language, you tend to speak more literally, more bluntly, because you don't have the idioms mastered.
Yeah.
And so he said, no, he's like, you're not ready. You're not ready to play a show. He's like, you're below standard. I can't have my name on this performance. And they're pushing back, and, various and sundry obscenities were hurled. And eventually he just kind of snapped and said, I'm sorry, karaoke is better. And so there were some social media posts made by the offended party, if you will, which in this day and age you expect. But the point being, sometimes you need to be told you're not good as a musician,
right?
Or as a teacher, or as a speaker, or as a podcast host. And God knows we've had plenty of people tell us that. Mostly, never mind. I'm not going to go there. But
and let's be frank, it's mostly your friends.
Yes. Who just don't like me in the first place. Right. But the point is, like, that guy from Lyman had actually told me that we had some issues when we did a full volume practice before we actually played a show there. Oh, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. And I knew it came from a good place.
Yeah.
So that helped. But two, like, yeah, I know, I heard it. I was there. We were awful at practice. That's why we practiced. But I think it just goes to.
I can just hear the exchange now. You guys suck. I know, right?
Yeah. We had a bad night. I know. I was here for it. It's just like with the podcast. Now I don't listen to it. I was there.
Yeah.
I have already experienced this. But like, we have such thin skin right now.
Oh my gosh, yes.
For everything, but particularly musicians. If you're told this music you made isn't very good, you can do better.
Sure.
We lose it and we take it as a personal attack when it's not that. All we're saying, all is being said is this particular thing that you created wasn't good. Right.
No, I can definitely relate. Thankfully, not really necessarily personally. Don't really know where to start my thoughts on this. But that's something that we've noticed plenty of times at church as well. Is when it comes time for, critical, albeit constructive, but critical feedback. Right. Whether it be something is innocuous as, hey, 3-part harmony doesn't work here. Yeah. Right? It doesn't work for this style of song. Not that you were off interval or you were off rhythm, but it doesn't work for this song. Something as simple as that to, hey, you're really struggling to hit those high notes. Is there something that we can work on? Like it's always done, like you said, coming from a good place with the desire to work together and help improve. But, I think there also has to be a line where you're not ready is a good answer. Right. And, we've had, and that, don't get us wrong. That's a hard thing to say, right? Yeah. As I was talking about earlier, not being ready can come in the form of musicianship, but it can also come in the form of logistics, right? If you can't, if you can't show up to rehearsal, you're not ready. If you can't, if you can't put yourself aside for a minute and realize that this part just needs 8th note chugging power chords and literally nothing else, you're not ready. Right. But I think the reason why, it's interesting, but also validating that you point out that criticism, yes, in general right now is very, poorly received. But, there's a famous YouTube, kind of clinical psychologist / philosopher, that's known for saying that if anything is important to say, it will be offensive, right? No matter what. It's just a matter of like what your motivations are. But I find it validating that you say that for musicians, because I feel the same way. And I think I've come after so many years really of kind of chew on why this is it really has to do with music is such a personal thing, and the creation of it much more so. Now, it's more personal than like visual art, right? Where visual art, you're taking a pencil or paint or whatever, and you're applying some kind of substance to some kind of medium. Sure. Right. Whereas with music, you are actually producing these sounds with your body. Right. Whether it's strumming a guitar or particularly vocally, right? Like that's the most personal, because you're actually utilizing vibrations in your vocal cords to project supposedly musical things. It is something that's uniquely you. How many people have watched, The Joy of Painting by Bob Ross and been able to pull off amazing landscapes? Yeah. Or go to one of those, wine and canvas places and do really, really good artwork, right? But happy accidents with the key of F sharp. Sure. Sure. It's different. G flat, depending on your instrument. Every now and then, Josiah prefers to use a capo, so he doesn't have to think about
Oh, absolutely.
It advanced stuff, especially when he's leading. And every now and then, like, something will show up in a flat key. I'm like, dude, that ain't how this works. If you got keys, it's a flat. If you got strings, it's a sharp. That's how you do it.
Anyways, just how it's done.
Anyways, but yeah, there's something about music, especially vocals, like you hit on. It's not just personal; it's uniquely you, right? And like, a case can be made for your unique use of tools. Now, whether that be brushes, media, canvas, or whether that be pedals or signal routing or string gauge or pick type or pickup selection or what have you. I mean, all of those cases can be made. But, at the end of the day, there aren't too many musicians, at least probably by statistic, that are just rote learners, right? There will always be. It's like the thing, John, like that YouTube video that went around, that Facebook video of John Mayer playing like an entry-level Epiphone through some solid-state amp next to a pool, and it's 100% uniquely John Mayer because the, quote, tone is in the fingers. Now, the tone is you, right? At least in that analogy. Yeah. But I think where we run into issues is that personal level of attachment is much more prevalent with individuals who have primarily been a hobby or a hobbyist musician, right? Where they, and that's not to say that, like, for guitar, I was never classically trained in guitar, right? This much is pretty obvious, frankly. But of course, it is now my instrument of choice. But if you as a person haven't received classical musical training, it's more difficult to accept any sort of criticism or critique with grace. Because I was a classically trained cellist for years, Suzuki method all the way on up.
Ah, okay.
And we would be sectioned off. We'd have to play individual excerpts, record them. We would get scored on them. Our grade for the class, once we got to high school, and it was actually a class and not like a ad hoc extracurricular thing, would be dependent on your performance of those parts. I mean, so you were being measured by your capability, right? And sure, there'd be things with like application of vibrato and bow pressure and things like that. But there was still obviously room for personal expression and things like that. Everyone does vibrato differently. But when you're brought up in a, I don't know what to call it, format or environment that is built around healthy criticism for the result of refinement, then when someone says, "Hey, like this past Sunday between services, Lars was back in the green room in the band lounge and was like, hey, that last song, you're really," I mean, he called it sliding into the notes. It's scooping is what it is.
Yeah.
You're really scooping. And it was like, I know that's partially a style thing, but I can understand how, in the part from where I start to where I end up, there's dissonance there, and I understand that. And what it was a conversation about technique and how what I'm putting into the microphone and how that's translating into the house. There was nothing attacking about it. It was 100% relating to something that I made a conscious choice, stylistically or otherwise, to do. And Lars was being critical of it, and it didn't hurt.
Yeah, and that leads into another really important aspect of all of this is you couldn't hear yourself in the house.
Right.
And so if you're a band that records, then you need to listen to your own material.
Yes. We've talked about it with sermons
listen to
before,
yourself.
Game tape.
Yeah. And like, for instance, if you record on Logic, it automatically gives you a buffer at the end, right?
Yeah.
Like that blank space.
Yep.
And you have to trim it when you bounce the project, or else you'll have a bunch of blank space.
Mm-hmm.
This particular band that was all butthurt about stuff has recordings with 4 minutes of empty dead space at the end of a track, because they bounced the project and then didn't listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right? Like,
I'm sitting
you need
here,
to know what you're doing.
And
right?
I'm sitting here knowing full well that I've done similar things on earlier recordings of this podcast, hundreds of episodes ago, perhaps, but I've done it.
Right.
And does it hurt to
And I don't know because I didn't listen to it.
Right. Kyle Daly,
we've made that joke 3 times.
Kyle Daly has called me out directly on a few times like this.
And
like,
Kyle will call anybody out. He doesn't care.
For sure. But the thing is that if you care enough, this isn't just church music, obviously. It's just in general. If you care enough to deliver a quality, call it product, right?
Yep.
Then being able to graciously receive critical feedback is vital to that. More important is being able to come out with some actionable steps from that feedback. Not just take it and be like, well, I guess I suck then, but I'm going to do it anyways. Like, no, let's take that feedback, engage in a conversation, really make sure that we're on the same page of what we're talking about. Because when Lars said sliding into notes and I said scooping, that's actually not what it was. It was me dropping down and hitting kind of like a third between the root and the next note. Still a stylistic thing and something that didn't necessarily translate well to the final mix. But I wouldn't have known what he was getting at. I would have just assumed when he said sliding that I wasn't attacking the pitch straight on. That wasn't what he meant at all. What he meant is that when I'm transitioning to a different note, that I often will hit an intermediate note. And I think, and that's for me personally, it serves as kind of a internal reference pitch, but that's besides the point. But it required a conversation.
And it
not
required
like a hard conversation or a meeting.
It required, even in that short conversation, you had to define your terms.
Right. It was less than 5 minutes, and it was like, oh, okay. I don't know if I can, since that's a stylistic choice, I don't know if I can change that right now, but I will absolutely work on that. And being more conscious, the second service was better than the first. And because even though there's some things I couldn't change right then, I was able to make at least some adjustments because I understood the concern or the criticism, and I thought about ways to address it or make it better or start that process. What we see with a lot of people who are hobbyist musicians, or especially vocalists, right, who may not have had choral training in high school, and that's or college. I mean, that's not super common, right? But maybe they have a great voice. Talking to them about something that you've heard, and like even something like, hey, get up closer on the mic so we have more more proximity effect, so we get more low end in your voice like I'm doing now, is something that's completely constructive, completely actionable. But even if it's, hey, you're not hitting this note, but we know you can. How can we support you? Can we put a reference pitch in the click track? If it's a cold open song, can we work on your in-ear mix? Can we take a few minutes out of rehearsal to work on your in-ear mix to make sure you're getting the reference pitches that you need?
Yeah.
But if you get immediately butthurt because somebody has, quote, called you out on something, well, you can't go anywhere from there. If you're just going to be offended or hurt, that's where you have to stay.
Know your ability.
Right. Until the point,
know your limitations. Right. And this comes with experience, right? Like when I was in a crappy high school pop punk band, I didn't know my limitations like I do now. I'm so old. Almost 20 years later.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, immediately when you said that, I went back to my crappy high school pop punk band doing Green Day and Alkaline Trio covers.
Yeah, I'm on a little bit of an Alkaline Trio kick right now.
Oh man, Radio is one of my favorites. I still play that line on bass all the time. It's so fun.
But we can't get an actual explicit tag on this, so we won't play it.
Right. It wasn't until years later I realized what Cooking Wine was about. Anyways, it brought me right back then. And thinking of my sophomore year, we call it the JV show, the junior varsity show. And I remember I had my PV Rage 158, my Digitech RP50.
Yes, sir.
And my PV Raptor. No, maybe it wasn't a Raptor. It might have been an early Ibanez Geo. But regardless, I remember, and it was rough. That was the first, I think that was the first time I actually had gear envy over anything, because there was this other guy, who was in a band at the time, Downriver, but said kind of folksy, who had like his dad's original like Fender Mustang, and it was Pelham Blue, and I didn't know anything about it at the time, but I'm like, oh, Fender. That's where my love of Fender started, was seeing it. It was like, that is a beautiful guitar. But that's besides the point. Even back then, if someone said, you suck, I'm like, yeah, probably. What can we do to not suck? Wrapping this up, we had a guy audition for rhythm guitar. We don't have a lot of people in our guitar queue. It's really just three of us, as far as like designated guitarist, right? And not like worship leader, who also plays acoustic or something like that. We really have three and a half. Sometimes we got one that floats between a few different instruments, but anyways, we had someone audition for rhythm guitar the other night, and he does, at this point in his life, he doesn't own an electric guitar or rig anymore. I'm like, well, we can make something work too. We have a church-owned Gretsch Electromatic. We've got church-owned amps. We've been considering getting a Pod Go just to have around.
Or a Westminster Effects Augsburg Deluxe amp sim, right? Or Geneva amp sim,
right? We can absolutely do that. We will talk about such things.
Yeah, we can make that.
Yeah. However, not the point. I was like, here, just take my guitar, and this is like I must have been in a really good mood, because I handed my flippin' American Ultra to someone I barely know. I'm like, here you go. And we were doing Unstoppable Gods, so I had that intro part. I had dotted eighth delay and reverb and octave and everything on it. And I was like, okay, this is what I play. You play whatever you want. Just start stepping on stuff if it doesn't sound right. Take some time to get acclimated. And he knew that he had to navigate and essentially play through all of these effects, because it would take him so much time to figure out where everything was. And at the end, he was like, yeah, man, it was weird playing with all those wet effects on there. But it was still fun. And I was like, yeah, it was still fun. And I could hear through that you did great. You just need to, kind of lock in on your use of dotted eighth delay, because let's be honest, that's still kind of where we're at as church musicians. And he was like, oh yeah, totally. But and that was it. That was it. It was a friendly conversation. It reminds me of this online comic. It's like a recaptionable thing, and it's like some dog is like, does your dog bite? Oh no, but he can hurt you in other ways. And then then the frame switches to the dog, and it's like, your drivetrain is trash. We just need to be able to, in the spirit of the recipients of Paul's letters, receive criticism, critique, and guidance with grace and come with an actionable result after that.
Yes. Good stuff. Let's move on to the Inquisition.
Let's do it.
All right, and this is the Inquisition, where you contribute to the show via weekly post in the Westminster Effects Doxology Podcast Lounge. And as is tradition, we start with Brian Morris, and oh boy. He says, Baptist Humor 2.0, which is a Facebook meme page, went on a really weird vasectomy meme binge about 2 weeks ago. Is it sinful to get a vasectomy or a hysterectomy? Let's just answer this one quickly and move on.
No,
there's no direct biblical command against it.
Right.
I guess it would depend on your reasoning, of course. There is such a thing as sinful reasoning.
That's true. That's true.
If your reasoning is so you can run around with no consequences at all,
right? But if your reasoning
that would be a sin.
The reasoning, if your reasoning is you want to be responsible in your vocation of father or mother, then yes. Well, let's call it the regulative principle or the normative principle of reproductive health, and move right along.
All right. Austin Dobbs asks, sitting down to preach, is it appropriate? Have you covered this already?
Oh yeah, we had that video. The guy showed his. That's fine. Like it's another thing. Like it's like
within Lutherans being typically more normative, and the more Reformed
Indeed.
strains, it's more regulative. But that is something that is in both camps totally a liberty thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Bradley actually sat down to preach a sermon this week. I don't know why, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I think I would prefer a standing preacher. There's more power in the voice that way. You can move around, have a little more stage presence and stuff like that. But Jesus sat down to preach because that was the custom of the tabernacle, or not the tabernacle, the synagogue.
Yeah.
And
I really can't even think of a way, unless we really stretch it, where that would even where we could even make the case that it's a bad thing. Like, you're lazy. Like, are you though? Like, you wrote a sermon and you're delivering it to the people of God. Are you lazy? Like, really?
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
I think David Platt sits down to preach all the time. Current criticisms aside, well, really, I have several criticisms of Platt, but he's perfectly orthodox. I've benefited from listening to him some, and he usually sits down.
Yeah, I mean,
so he's not lazy.
No, I mean, our sermon this past week was pre-recorded, but that's only because our campus pastor has just is in the process, or rather later on down the road, of recovering from pneumonia-complicated COVID. So he didn't know if he would have the energy to preach a 25-minute, 30-minute sermon back to back. And so we pre-recorded it, and he was there to run the service regardless, and nobody batted an eye.
Interesting. I legitimately don't know how I feel about that, because I'm not a fan of the multi-campus thing.
Right.
But he was there.
Yeah.
That's another layer,
Yeah, it was like, oh, this is interesting, but it's not like something that we're going to do all the time. It was a special circumstance. I think that's where like the video stuff kind of fits. I think the multi-campus, like the remote live streamed in sort of thing, like Village Church does, down in Texas with a lot of their plants that haven't transitioned out of the Village Church kind of circuit. They pipe in the main campus,
right? Which I do disagree with, but
because at that point you're going to church for a pastor at that point. Like,
exactly.
You can't. I mean, even if the pastor writes something, you can't like find an elder to present it. Anyways,
yep.
Let's
do
what? Let's do a couple more.
Yeah, let's do one more. I gotta pee.
One more then,
so everybody knows. Brad Speed asks, how can churches like Bethel effectively pray the "Your kingdom come" part of the Lord's Prayer, while essentially ignoring the "Your will be done" part. Which,
I mean, how can they read scripture without ignoring most of it? Like I
mean, that's just what they do. And this is the failure of word of faith theology, is God is incapable of doing his will unless he has a willing human participant.
Yeah.
That is what they teach. And goodness, I have gone off on Bethel many times in the past, but that's what word of faith theology is. It hamstrings God. It ties God's hands until people come along to unbind his hands.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially props up God as needing an operator. Yeah.
Bless their hearts.
I mean, that's the thing. Is like it's a strange question. Like how can they pray it? I mean, they just misunderstand it. That's how they can pray it. I mean, like just like so many churches misinterpret scripture. Like,
yeah,
it's just yeah. They don't do it right.
Bless their hearts, of course. Well, let's leave it there. I have to make use of the facilities.
In that case, thank you all.
And we're out of time anyway.
Yeah. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, support the show on anchor.fm, share it on the socials. We would be forever grateful. Interact with us and the rest of the Doxology podcast community at the Westminster Effects Doxology Podcast Lounge on Facebook. For Cody, I'm John. We'll see you next week.